Okay, so um, if you have any questions, you can always interrupt the talk and ask it if there's a part that I'm saying and you're not getting it, or it doesn't. I didn't express it clear enough. Just please interrupt and ask a question. Okay, so thoughts are not a problem, and emotions are not a problem, and sensations are not a problem. But clinging to the thoughts, emotions, and sensations, that's the problem. In meditation, cultivating a dispassionate study of oneself might seem to be an uncaring attitude, but dispassion is not opposed to emotion, contrary to what many people think, but only opposed to an intemperate, self indulgent emotion. A composed person of self knowledge acts wholeheartedly with body, speech, and mind at any time or any place. A calm, aware person is free to act wholeheartedly with full emotion. A person of calm, open, emotional, fully emotional person is a person who is composed in their whole being. And the emotions, because they are composed, the emotions are free, fully free to express. Um, Self consciousness is the opposite of a calm and dispassionate person. A self conscious mind edits and manipulates a distracted mind, and however caring of others in appearances it may be, a self interested person will act only in self interest. A distracted mind will only act in self interest. And that's why we have to master ourselves to gain full freedom of inquiry and expression. Imagine when you come to do zazen that you bring a crowd of emotions, sensations, and thoughts with you to the zendo, and they all demand your full expression or your full attention. You scarcely have room to move, so crowded is your mind. But in meditation, you have to look at each thought, each emotion, and validate it. You have to study it and then let it go. The longer you sit calmly, the more the crowd grows smaller and the more relaxed you begin to feel. And they're all you, as you don't know you. So you have to see them, accept them as they are, and then release them. But they will not completely leave your house because they are you, and will come around again and again until you fully accept them as they are. Each time they come to sit in your home, greet them with a friendly face, and they will eventually become very helpful friends indeed. They will become allies. But if you don't acknowledge or accept them, they will hang around your interior and become thugs and bullies in your own home. Thoughts and emotions offer tantalizing invitations to an inattentive mind to enter into their activity, but once you do, they close the door behind you. But that's not a trick or a trap. It's just our mind doing what it does naturally. It offers whatever is present in our immediate repertoire of thoughts and emotions. We don't have to enter into any activity of thought or emotion that's offered by the mind, but we do have to acknowledge the activity of the mind, unless you want to meet another harassing bully. So you just observe the activity, acknowledge it, and then release it. However we may think about ourselves, we are very resourceful inside, and our abundance is inexhaustible. But unacknowledged abundance is like gold hidden in a closet, locked with a key we forgot about. The color of our emotional Mind at the moment determines what possibilities actualize for us. If we understand that a dualistic mind divides reality into two extremes, we know that we're not seeing a true form of experience when we meet it. We know we're seeing really just a possibility of one way or the other. So the color of our emotional mind determines what possibilities will actualize by how we act towards it. Having patience with our perceptions and knowing that we can be deceived by our own thoughts will help us to drop off the delusions we have about them and let the lost parts of ourselves come home. And this is the time and place to look with compassion and composure at each and every arising part of us, whether it's familiar or not. Anger, worry, frustration, and fear come back to us in the same guise that it left. Whether we want it or not, we have to open our mind and receive it. So if we acknowledge and release them and allow them to sit in our reality, they will transform into creativity, peace, patience, and trust, and take their rightful place again in our interior. If we are patient and sit quietly long enough, all the lost parts of ourselves that we threw outward in self-indulgences of body, speech, and mind eventually will come home again. Your practice here is not a way to attain anything. It's not a way to become more than you already are. It's not a way to become better than you already are. We all began in ignorance and dressed up ourselves like children with a doll. We presented ourselves to others with countless expressions of who we thought we were, but many of them were just distortions of emotions and ideas. Now here we are in the Zendo, weighed down with wearing too many coats of ideas and confused perceptions. And we're in luck today because in a zazen kai, you can take them off one at a time and begin to breathe freely again. Today, we can look beneath our thinking minds. Today in zazen, it's time to go beyond words and begin to study silence. Thoughts will fall away from us like water off a duck's back, one after the other, if we don't cling to them. Perceptions will fall away in silence with nothing to replace them if we don't cling to them. Today in silence, if we don't resist its emergence, we can experience what it tells us without the thinking mind intruding. It's time to study us as we are this moment, not as a thinking mind's version of us. One second, can't get this part. We need nothing more than we already are. But like the bud of a plant, we gather all that we are from the whole plant, from the roots up through the stem, through the leaf, through the petals, into our own uniqueness. We gather all that is possible from our interior by receiving all that comes to us from the outside. Not with clenched teeth, but with open eyes and heart, and we let it stay wordlessly present without any need to act on it. We allow what's present to sit there and be part of us without doing anything at all. We recognize and celebrate it in silence, respectful silence, and eventually everything that belongs to us returns to us wordlessly. Everything that belongs to us comes home again. And everything that doesn't belong to us, like confusion, mistaken perceptions, angry emotions, fall away like smoke because it never really formed and it was made of shadows, imagination, fears, worries, and anxieties and tears. And today we just have to focus our breath and without words, turn inward to see what's really present. In silence, we can understand what the key to our room filled with gold is. The key to the room with the gold hidden in our house is our breath. One moment, one breath, again and again. Thank you. Now we'll bring Peter in.
And Harvey.
And Harvey. Harvey's sitting over here keeping us company. There he is. Okay. Do you have any questions? Additions? Subtractions? Commentary? Mark? Oh, I'm sorry.
Mike.
Just a minute.
Mike, Mark.
Hi. Yes. Does someone else want to go? I was just going to compliment you, Jane. I thought the bud analogy or metaphor was really wonderful.
Thank you, Mark.
That's all I have to say. Everything else I'd have to hear again to really analyze it with my other side.
You can question anything, please. Who else had their hand up just then? Somebody. June?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when these thoughts and emotions come up, did you use the word somewhere in the talk validation or invalidation? Like I wasn't really clear on that.
Yeah, validation of whatever comes up. You have to acknowledge it, validate it. You have to understand that it really is you and accept it fully. That's validation. So when you see the emotion, you can't
Okay, so it's not validation in the sense
of what? Validation in the sense of what?
Oh, sorry, keep going. I think my internet connection is not good.
Yeah, I can hear it. That's you were going to say, so it's now validation in the something. I missed the rest.
Jane's asking.
Oh, it's just that when we validate these thoughts and emotions, it's not that we believe in them necessarily, but it's just acceptance, right?
Yeah, it's like having a lot of children of all different kinds of clothing and all different kinds of ideas and all different kinds of makeups, and you whether you agree with any of them or not, you just validate their presence, their life. You just say, well, this is from me, this is mine, and accept it. And because it really is you, but it's often comes back to you in a sense, in a way that you don't really know yourself. So sometimes people will say some very angry words, and we get angry because we feel like this is so out of my keeping. This has nothing to do with me, and I can't stand this, and they're ignorant or whatever. And then you finally realize eventually that actually those words are you in a way you didn't recognize or understand yourself. And so you just accept it, you let it in, 100% let it in, and let it sit there without doing anything. And the act of doing nothing allows it to change in sitting right there with you in the Zendo, as it were. So it becomes you as it really should be you. This is Harvey coming over to validate me.
So it's like a transformation of that.
What? The transformation of things is that when you take your own...
It's almost like you're transforming your energy.
Yes. You're not doing it. It's doing it. It's just allowing, you're not hearing, so it can just normally change back to what it is. Well, for example, when you get angry, you take a part of yourself and you throw it out as something. And it's not you as you know yourself, but it's you as you are in that moment. So you get very angry and you throw out some energy at somebody else and his words or whatever. And if it comes back to you eventually through somebody else, you just let it in, let it sit there, and do nothing with it. If you let it sit long enough, it will just not be there anymore. And it's not because it just disappears or went away, it's because it's you again. But it's you as you know yourself, you as you know your understanding of yourself. But as long as we don't know so much about ourselves, we allow, anger that comes toward us, we throw it back out again. And then we never stop to think, well, this is us coming home. You're welcome. Does anybody else want to differ with that? Mark?
I want to say is that the last 20, 30 years, psychiatry our therapy has advocated for people to stand up for themselves and to fight for their rights. And you can get angry about this. So what you're saying goes in direct confrontation with that?
Yes, it does. It actually, if you are familiar with Christianity, then the part of if somebody smites you on the cheek, turn the other cheek, it's more of that, because it's saying practicality. You don't want to lose any part of yourself. And whatever the idea of standing up for yourself is, that again has to do with self. And we're in the business of trying to understand, well, what is this thing we call self? And why should this thing we call self stand up for itself? If we're Buddha nature, where is that when we stand up for ourselves?
So you're saying that if we pay attention to this, instead of when we are angry, shoving it down inside of us to hide it and to pretend it's not there and get ill or let it come out in another nasty way, then we really sit with it and we own it and we transform it.
We transform it by acceptance, but it transforms itself because it's in motion, and it's not the anger that we threw it out in. Basically, it's this natural energy of us.
So we're throwing it out and we accept it back in at some point because karma's like that, right?
Yeah.
And so then we keep circulating it until we are at peace with it, correct?
You could call it that, yeah, if you call it circulation. I say it's just sitting with it in our lap until it just isn't, because it isn't real as a form of anger to begin with. It's like something we constructed briefly. So when we're angry, we take an immediate idea that developed into emotion and we construct something with it, either fury or whatever, anxiety, whatever that is. And we construct it and throw it out as a weapon at somebody or even at ourselves. But as long as we believe it's real, then it becomes a weapon against ourselves because we do get sick from it. So just accepting it allows what doesn't belong to us to leave it, and what does belong to us to stay with us. It's like you throw out a beautiful energy and all this garbage gets attached to it. And when it comes back, we don't recognize it at all because it's attached so many other things to it. And so we just sit with it and let it deconstruct itself until it's just natural again. And then it's nothing to worry about or think about. It just becomes us again. I'll have to worry about this later when I talk about it more. But that much I know that if we don't embrace it, if we don't accept it as it is in all its terrible form, we can't understand the beauty of who we are inside. and that when we throw out energy towards other people with words or activity, body, speech, or mind, then we can't understand who we are if we turn away from what doesn't look like us. So we have a lot in us that doesn't look like us, but none of it will stay if we don't obstruct it. Yeah, Chris.
So, not too long ago, I remember having a conversation with you, or maybe it was a Dharma talk, but regardless, what the sort of advice or teaching or takeaway was essentially emotions come up in conscious awareness, but I shouldn't attach to them. I shouldn't identify with them. I should just see them as just emotions. And essentially the way to not attach to them, or the way to not cling to them, is to not, hitch my identity to them. Now it seems like you're saying the opposite.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is you don't identify with what isn't you, and you just let it sit with you until all that isn't you can leave, and all that is you stays. So when you throw out anger, you throw it out with a lot of other stuff, and that isn't you. And that's why if you sit long enough, what belongs to you comes back to you, and what doesn't belong to you leaves.
So what's the validation or ownership you were speaking of earlier, in the context of non-identity?
It's like seeing your child come back to the house covered with mud and dirt and wearing, all kinds of terrible things, and you still say, "Look, my child, you're back home. Come on in." But get rid of all that garbage. I think it's more like you understand that whatever terrible looking part it is shows up in your doorstep, it's yours, because it was you threw it out in a way that allowed it to become like that. And when it comes back, you allow it to get rid of all that. And so what does not belong to you does not stay, and what does belong to you does stay. That's what I think.
So
How do you know?
maybe
How do you know what
you could
belongs to you
say,
and what doesn't?
okay,
What? What?
Okay,
How do you know what belongs to you and what doesn't?
Yes. What did I say?
so you could say it's ours in the sense that it came about because of our karma, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's us.
It is us. It isn't.
Uh,
But it doesn't belong to us. But we sculpted it, as it were. We were playing in the mud and we threw it out. It's ours, but it's not really ours to stay. It's only ours in that we made it. We started it. Does that make sense?
so we can say it's ours, or we can say it's us as a form of validating it, as a form of accepting it in a way. But then the next step would be non-clinging, non-identity, and saying, but in order to let it go, it's sort of we can let it go because ultimately in the next moment it's not us, and we don't have to maintain this connection, this personal identity with whatever it is.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it is us. It is us. But it's not us that will stay with us. It's us that we created, we constructed. And as we sit with it and we allow what isn't essentially us, then all the constructions we made eventually fall off little by little. As long as we remain calm, don't identify with it, and don't obstruct it with clinging. Does that make
May
sense?
I venture into your metaphor there real quickly? Okay, so so the child comes back all dirty, muddy, horrible looking. Do we reject the child, or do we take the child in and clean it up?
No, we don't even clean it up. It cleans itself.
Really?
The child
Okay.
cleans itself up because the only thing that's making it terrible is the mental constructions we've created and put on it. They aren't us. They're mental activity or speech activity or physical activity that we've thrown out with it. So if we had a lot of hate when we were angry, that will be all attached to it in a form of hatred. And when it comes back, it transforms into what is us and what is not us. And anything attached to it that came through other people is not us, and it will change back again. Does that make any sense?
Wow, this feels like a scene in a horror movie. I'm going to leave it at that.
You know, if I'm making a mistake with this, please jump in.
I mean,
I'm sorry for speaking over someone else earlier. I don't understand this. What is this notion of what is truly us and what isn't? How do we know what's us and what isn't?
I think we don't. That's why it changes itself, because we cling to ideas so easily that any kind of mental activity that we have attached to ourselves, to our thoughts, and to what we would like to be, anything having to do with aspirations or trying to become, striving of any kind, all of this activity, we coat everything. When we get mad at somebody, all of that comes out in words or emotion, and we send it out, and eventually it comes back the same way, and maybe even with more to it. So what is us is what we send out, first of all, and then letting what it really was, without the mental activity attached to it, return.
This is exceedingly abstract. Can you give me an example of like dealing with Peter, for example, right? And this happened.
All right. Well, back when we were first married, we would occasionally get really angry. And occasionally I would get so angry that I would say a lot of things I did not mean. But my emotion welled up and it came out against my better wishes. And so a lot of emotion, mental activity, and things that I didn't personally even believe, but felt angry enough to say, was attached to everything that I threw out at that point. And if he got angry in return and then they clashed, we made a monster in between us. And that had to work its way out, but it came back through other people. Because when you throw it out, everybody, somewhere, someone will bring in the same exact thing, like a mirror. But say if he didn't get angry and it was just sitting there like a big monster between us, again, just made up of words and emotions, then that activity can really wipe us out, both of us. But if we pulled back at the last minute and stopped identifying with what we were actually saying and realized that it was just an excess of something and that the words were coming out of fear more than anything else, then we stop and let it just settle at that point. When it comes back, we make peace between ourselves, say. But when it comes back in another form and we meet it all over again, it's like, what started this? The feeling is that we're being attacked. You know, what is this feeling? What is this emotion? And all these words coming at us. And then if we don't get excited, if we get excited, we start fighting back. And then we truly make a monster that goes around and around. And eventually we wake up and say, because one of us gets sick, and we meet this thing we created, but not clinging to it for a change and just looking at it for a change. And instead of reacting, we try to apply skillful means instead. And that's what I'm talking about. And when we do, then we take a lot of garbage back to ourselves that we threw out, and we either get sick with that or we don't, depending on how calm we stay and how much we deal with it in a rational way rather than emotional and getting all excited and falling apart. So we finally start to deal with it as something that is like workable. We can actually change our fate. We can change our karma. We can change our life just by how we deal with what started coming back at us. And it was all us. So when we come in the Zendo and sit, we have all this emotion, anger, and whatever, and we sit with it. But if we sit with it without fighting it, then we start to transform all of this in us, and then it begins to transform. with us, the outside and the inside. Does that make more sense? No?
Answer some questions.
I have, whose hand was up first?
Me. I think maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned validation. It sounds more like you're talking about acknowledgement and recognition and
Yes,
ownership
yes,
of anger,
yes.
which actually, in modern therapy, and Zen Buddhism is not therapy, is called, just acknowledging your feeling, saying, I'm angry, or saying, I'm scared, or, to yourself, and recognizing it, because it's that step that we skip usually and go straight to, go straight to blurting it all out there, and it's somebody else's fault. It's somebody else's fault, and now the energy goes on them, and so that, and again, teaching and the emphasis on social emotional learning has begun to put, and the emphasis on mindfulness in schools has begun to encourage students to acknowledge or recognize a feeling, because I never did that in high school. I was never like, I'm angry. No, it's those girls or that, and so
History.
what?
We can't fall back on personal history.
Right.
You
I don't
can't
understand what you mean by that.
blame personal history in any way.
Right. We can't blame other people.
Yeah.
Even if they do, even if something is their fault, the act of owning and acknowledging and recognizing our emotion first is the first step to diffusing it, diffusing the bomb, and
Yes.
and sucking the power out of it,
Exactly.
and getting, that's what I get. And so I think maybe the idea that you were saying validate versus, validate is a good word too. Saying, but recognize, acknowledge, admit versus, I'm going to go out and do this, when you don't realize it's because you're hurt or you sad or whatever, seems to go with a lot of modern therapy. So that's what I got.
It's exactly what I'm trying to say, Ellen. Thank you. But Mark, I wanted to say one thing. I'm not criticizing therapy, because I think therapy is really helpful. But therapy, from my point of view, and I could be wrong about this, deals with the self. And in Buddhism, we're looking beyond the self. That's the main point, the thing where you can go back and blame personal history anymore. You really do have to take the whole moment that you exist in and find your solution right here. So that's the difference for me. Anyway, so
I agree.
thank you.
I was just throwing it at you to see what you would say, because I don't fall. I'm not in that therapy trap.
Thank you, Mark. Good points.
These are the last three questions, last three comments.
Rachel, you're on.
There I go. Sorry. I quite reveled in your talk. May I use a personal example and ask you if this illustrates or reflects an understanding of what you said?
Yes.
There was quite a fraught situation, because actually someone was dying. And I chose to take an action that was beneficial in the circumstances. Someone in that circumstance was very angry, actually, that I did it and they didn't, but they were very angry. and later actually accosted me in the post office and said their therapist had explained that anger should be expressed and did so. But for whatever, I was able to be calm because I really respect this person. And I just expressed some sorrow that what had happened. But that's it. I did not respond in anger, even though I felt offended. A year later, she came back to me thinking I was wonderful and was quite jolly about it, about everything. I was still, frankly, disappointed and just a little irritated. But I said nothing. It wasn't worth, I didn't feel that was necessary. And then after that, I actually regard the whole situation as beneficial. It taught me a lot. And I only use that as an example because I've been kind of raised in therapy as well to have responded and talked about my feelings and talk it up, but I did not do that. I chose a different direction. Is that somewhat of what you're saying? In other words, I knew I was angry, but I chose not to suppress it, but to keep it to myself in a sense and work and have it just sit there. And 2 years later, I'm even glad it came up. And it was over a very serious situation. It wasn't trivial. Is that?
Yeah, that's more what I'm talking about. Yes.
Thank you.
And Varuna?
Yeah, I enjoyed the talk. Thank you very much. And yeah, so my understanding is that it sounds like the main point here is that we have a choice, right? When an emotion arises in ourselves, we don't have a choice of what emotion arises, but we have the choice of identifying with that emotion, right? So if an emotion arises, we can say, oh, this is anger. And rather than say, oh, this is my anger, if you make the choice to say this is anger, then you have the option of letting it go, right? Yes. But if you say, oh, I'm Varuna, I'm an angry person, then you become that anger, right? And you can't let it go, and it consumes you, and then it defines you, right? So, so by identifying it as an emotion, like, oh, this is anger, you have the choice now to let it go, and it doesn't control you. And then, so it's a skillful way to deal with it. I mean, I think that's what it sounded like you were saying, like, yeah, it's our anger that's coming up. It's definitely coming from us. But whether we choose to identify it as part of who we are, that's where we have the power, right? To say, hey, it's just anger, you know, it came up and I'm letting it go. So.
Yeah, actually, that's one step in it. And what I was saying further is that we don't just identify with it, we embrace it, we let it back in. But it changes its form. It's not anger when we let it in, is what I'm saying. So we don't want to lose all that we are, and we don't want to throw away the best parts of ourselves. It's like throwing away gold out of your pocket because it's from you, and you don't want to lose it. And so we're very fortunate that what is it? Can't think of the name at the moment. We're fortunate that karma brings everything back to us. And because it does, we can finally complete ourselves in the end, hopefully. And so that is what I'm saying beyond that. So we acknowledge it to stop it dead in its tracks and then let it change itself. We let it transform, because when we're trying to conduct things with our head, it's still with ourselves that we're working. So we let something bigger step in and start to change our Buddha nature.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Spencer.
Hey, Jane.
Hi.
I enjoyed your talk. Thank you. Let me just get my screen on you here. There you go. No, that's not you.
Are you sure?
All right. So, you know, my issues are you know, with conflict between relative and absolute. So, you know, I sit, I'm able to identify thoughts, emotions, which, you know, or body sensations and thoughts or feeling, you know, and I'm able to, I'm real good at negation. So I'm able to see them, take it in, and then know that it's not real because I negate it in some way. I see that it's a production of my psyche, and then I process it, and I see it as the product of, you know, 10, you know, a billion neurons and a trillion, you know, neurochemical connections, and I let it go. But the fact is, I get up out of this room and I'm still angry. And, you know, the real world, in the relative world, that's great. I can't negate, you know, I can't be a nihilist because I have to exist. So, you know, I see it. So let's use metaphor of a dirty diaper. I see the dirty diaper. I thought I threw out the dirty diaper, but I'm still wearing the dirty diaper. And even though I know the dirty diaper doesn't exist, it still stinks. So.
You want me to? Okay. Well.
Oh, you know, I'm just saying that I'm real good with the, you know, the Buddhist jargon and working stuff out to the emptiness, but I'm not real good in, you know, dealing with my life every day in that sense.
Yeah. Can I just say here, when you talk about the relative and the absolute, they're really the same thing, but they're just, you look at it from one point of view and you look at it from another, like nirvana and samsara. It's your perspective that makes the difference. And if you're angry, still say you diffuse something, but you still carry the anger inside. Well, you're just seeing life moving at a very close range and not ignoring it. And that's, a dirty diaper is a dirty diaper. That's true. And there's no way you can make it smell like roses, but a dirty diaper is still a part of life. And it's the other, you know, we have half of dirty diaper and half of roses. And we enjoy both. And it may seem like it's not possible, but it is possible to take away the negative connotation of what a dirty diaper is. And it is possible not to get carried away by the roses. So it's not the sense of the bad parts of reality you want to get rid of, or you're stuck with them, but that you don't maybe see the point of what the dirty diaper is representing in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm stuck with the weeds and the dirty diapers, and I see it all as, you know, an inverted view, right? But yeah. I can't flip it. I don't see it. You know, I don't see the nirvana in the diaper.
You don't want to flip it. You want to change your perspective, but you don't want to change your reality, and you don't want to change the actions of your reality, because you can change your perspective about what it is more than anything. And what you're talking about is viewing it from the point of view of your relative mind. And you have to, when you're working with forgiving yourself or forgiving the anger or accepting the anger, what you're doing is you're taking your relative hands off everything and you're letting something much bigger in you start changing things.
A dirty diaper means your baby is healthy.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, for example, when I was studying art in school, one of the things that we had to do was to look at a pile of garbage and make it a beautiful painting. And you know, it's like you can look at things and then you look at garbage, but all you can see is garbage. And but we had to do it, so I just started to paint and draw it. And as you're working with it, you stop thinking of it as garbage. You just literally stop thinking of it that way. And you start to see, oh, light, dark, color, shape, whatever it is. And when you're finished, you can make a beautiful thing out of a pile of garbage. And you can even change your perspective of looking at it, so that now if I see a pile of garbage, I see the garbage, but I also see something else that I didn't see before I tried to do that. And I think it's you're still struggling to understand the what's the first one you said, relative and ultimate. You're still trying to understand ultimate with your relative mind, is what I think.
Yes, I mean, I'm very invested in my fixed views, and you know, and I get that, and
We all are.
ultimately, I don't want to let them go. So
Yeah, Spencer, this is the struggle we all have, is understanding what is the greater part of us with a small mind. And we're trying to look and understand what this Buddha nature is with a relative mind, and we can't do it. It is impossible. We can only do it through silence. So we have to let go of all the words, all the concepts, all the ideas in the background, the history, everything. We have to let it go and plunge into the abyss. And that's the only way we can do it, to understand what is the greater part of us. That's jumping off the 100-foot flagpole. Where
I'll sit with that, and
no guarantees at all when you do that. You have to literally jump where you have no idea what you're doing. And then you have to trust that the bigger part of you is going to take care of you and lead you in it, because it's you. The abyss is still you.
well, let me get back to filling my diaper.
A diaper will always be a diaper until you try to draw it.
That's what lunch is.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
I just, when you said why someone jumps off, it was because a friend died of cancer. In that situation, I believe that the enormity of the entire, it was a year, that it was that situation that created something in me to not respond in anger. It wasn't that I was wise and I remember the Buddhist teaching and all that. I can still lose my temper. But do you know what I mean? It was something else outside myself that was of such gravity that there was something within me that kept my mouth shut.
Yeah, well, maybe it's just that you decided to let the bigger part of you act rather than just your thinking mind.
Yeah, happily.
If I have jokes on this afternoon, if you have any further discussion that you'd like to have on this, please come and talk to me. We'll start after lunch. Okay. It was nice. Thank you for your good questions. Please feel free at any time to argue with me about this, because I'm still working on it too.
Okay.